Well, that didn't go, so we are live. Great. Shabbat Shalom to our friends who are online, and Shabbat Shalom to our hardy visitors who came into the cold to celebrate with the trees. It was our Tu B'Shvat adventure was to be an outdoor adventure where we visited each tree and they told us a story, but since it's 20 degrees or whatever it is, we thought that we would stay inside instead and bring the trees to us. Those who are online can follow along, just listening to us, but we have a special service here for the trees with some writings and things. I promise not to send any spitballs out to the crowd. So we celebrate Tu B'Shvat. The 15th of Shvat will occur on Sunday evening, I believe, to Monday. New Year's of the Trees, a wonderful time to think of our world and our environment. In Israel, we are told, it's hard to believe when we're in our coats and slogging around in the snow, but this is the beginning of the flowering of the trees. The sap at least is rising in the trees and creating new produce. And we happen in this year to be what's a Shemitah year, which is a year of release where we don't enjoy the produce of the land. A year of release so that the trees and all of our produce get a break. And so we begin a service that says, even if the land is full of all good things, still you must plant. Even if you are old, you must plant. Just as you found trees planted for others, so must you plant them for your children. And we put together a service that has abbreviated prayers because we have a special Amidah for the trees. And so we open with the words of the prophet who looked over Israel, went there to curse, but instead Balaam, the foreign prophet from Moab, was caused by Israel's beauty to bless instead. And he said, Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov, how beautiful is this encampment of Jacob, Mishkanotecha Yisrael, the worship places of Israel. And we sing that at every morning service. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkanotecha Yisrael. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkanotecha Yisrael. And we are told by our sages, Eila Devarim she'ein lahem shi'ur. These are the things that one may do without any measure, without any limit. Honoring one's father and mother, engaging in deeds of compassion, arriving early for study, morning and evening, dealing graciously with guests, visiting the sick, providing for the wedding couple, accompanying the dead for burial, being devoted in prayer, and making peace among people. But the study of Torah encompasses them all, or keneged kulam. It is as great as any of these, and the line continues, because it is a part of all of those things. And so it is that we worship today, and our Torah study will be a little unusual. It will be tree study, but since Torah is Eitz Chaim, we indeed will celebrate the trees of life. We begin with our call to worship, and we rise. Baruch et Adonai HaMevorach, Baruch Adonai Adonai, to whom our praise is due. Praise be Adonai, to whom our praise is due now and forever. Here is the story of creation according to the author Dara Horn. You once walked through a garden, past a tree you saw each day, and fell hushed by a surprise, a perfect round egg enfolded in a nest, trembling from the possibility within it. Or you held your beloved tight and felt that person's ribs tremble against yours. You once stood on the ocean's edge as water rushed toward invisible gates and heard the silent voice that told the waves, this far and no further. Or you clutched your parents' shrunken fingers as they waited for the end and knew that just as they bore you into this world, it was your task to bear them to the next. You once walked out of a garden, a perfect walled world where you were curled in God's hand like a baby bird and folded in an egg on the evening when you first discovered that you would not live forever. The sun set behind you as you looked over your shoulder, your eyes lingering on what you had lost. And then you turned toward the shimmering majesty of the night before you, counted the stars, and decided to live. Our world is beyond knowledge, greater than understanding. Help us, God, to accept what we cannot understand, to love the beauty of creation without trying to control it. Teach us to bend with life, to repair what we can repair, to live with our questions, and to rejoice in your wonders. Baruch atah Adonai, Yotzer Hamaorot. Blessed are you, God, the creator of all. And Revelation. Do you remember when you stood at Sinai? It happened like this. You once crouched behind a door after striking your little brother, hoping your parents wouldn't find you. You heard their footsteps, felt their souls shake within you, and then you rose humbled before them, and your days grew longer upon the earth. You once saw a man or woman more beautiful than the one by your side, and turned your face instead toward the one you chose, the one who chose you. You once heard how your rival prospered and you shuddered as envy clutched your lungs, and then you summoned your greatest strength and breathed. You once worshiped at a mirror, fixed your eyes on a screen, bowed before fame, gold, beauty, power, and then you read new words and smashed your idols on the stone. You once stood at the foot of a mountain and heard a still small voice that spoke only to you. Your eyes saw the sound of thunder and your ears heard the shining of the light. And then you turned your life into a prayer. God, open up our eyes, bless us with an understanding heart to receive your teachings, to make them real by our deeds, and to pass them on to others. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher ba'amo Yisrael ba'ahava. Blessed are you, Adonai. You have lovingly chosen your people, Israel, to receive the gift of Torah. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Le'olam Vahed. And we are seated. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol lebavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha v'hayu advarim ha'eleh asher anochi mitzavcha hayom levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha uvlechtecha b'derech uv'shokbecha uv'kumecha uv'shartam lehot al yadecha v'hayu latotafot b'neinecha uv'tavtam al mezuzot beitecha uv'isharecha L'man tizkaru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'hitem kedoshim lelohechem. Ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim lihyot lachem Elohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem. Adonai Elohechem emet. And finally, again from Dara Horn, remember the day you witnessed the impossible. You once lived in chains, beaten by failure or sorrow, your feet sunk in mortar and mud, and then one day a strong hand gripped yours and pulled you free. You once lived in a prison house, married to your master, afraid at every turn. And then one night, a pillar of fire ignited within you, leading the way out. You once lived in another city, in another country, in a place without choices, until you chose to escape. You carried all you owned on your shoulders and ran for the water's edge. The walls of water rose on your right and on your left. You once lay bound in a knot of grief, tied tight to a person who could never return, chained to a cloud. But one day you saw that the pillar of cloud had moved behind you, urging you forward, and you turned to face the wind. You were convinced it could never happen, that nothing could change, that your despair would overtake you and drive you into the sea. But one day, today, you held your breath and decided to leap forward. And then the waters parted and your feet found dry land. We were redeemed from slavery and are grateful for the opportunity to be free. Help us now to embrace our responsibility to redeem others. Inspire us to do our part in creating a world that is filled with dignity, truth, and justice. Baruch atah Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael. Blessed are you, Adonai, for redeeming Israel. And indeed, those words of redemption are the words from this week's portion, the Song of the Sea, when the Israelites took all of their fear, all of their trepidation and apprehension, and yet faced the sea and marched forward to what would be freedom. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha neda b'kodesh. No ra tehilot oseh fele, no ra tehilot oseh fele. Shira chadasha, shibchu gehulim, l'shimcha al sfat hayam. Yachad kulam, hodu v'himlichu, v'amru. Adonai imloch, Adonai imloch, le'olam v'ed. Rock of Israel, rise in support of Israel and redeem Judah and Israel as you promised, our Redeemer. Adonai Tzvaot is one of your names. Blessed are you, Adonai, for redeeming Israel. And we turn now to our Amidah. In fact, that Sur Yisrael usually gets people up, but our Amidah is a lengthened version of our traditional blessings that we do while standing. And I included it because it indeed is a special poetry inserted acrostic that blesses the trees among all of the blessings that we say for our prayer called the Amidah. It's called a krovot for Tu B'Shvat, and that's a poetic genre that are small poems that are woven throughout the weekday Amidah. And we, of course, don't do the weekday Amidah on Shabbat. However, this is such a beautiful poem. I thought we certainly could look at the poetry pieces as well as learning a little bit about what a daily service would be like. The Amidah, or the Shmona Esrei, is 18 or 19 different benedictions that are asked of God. And it is considered that on Shabbat, it's tacky to ask God for many things. And so we do the first three and the second three blessings on Shabbat, and in the middle talk about the Sabbath itself. However, this poem is woven through the weekday one with all of the blessings. And since it's an acrostic, we would lose the whole middle of the alphabet if we cut it out. So I wanted to share it with you, and you have it in your prayer supplements. This was written by Yehuda ben Hillel Halevi in the 11th century, and he was a medieval poet, and his work was found, this work was found in the Cairo Geniza. So it was found in documents that were set aside in Egypt. So it's possible that he lived in Egypt, but there are two different poems for Tu B'Shvat. Not this one, but another one speaks only of trees that grow in the Holy Land that we know of as Israel. So it's possible he lived either in Israel or in Egypt, but certainly his texts made their way to Egypt. And he is the only known composer that we have who wrote specifically for the Tu B'Shvat blessing. And so you will see, and I don't know how your copies came out. I tried to take the poetry pieces of this and mark them in green. An acrostic is an ABC, that a poem begins with A's and then B's and then C's. I see people looking around, so did something get out of order? Okay, good. That's always a nice piece. And since it is a lengthy piece, and I had you stand all the way for that Shema piece, I figure you can stand optionally, but you'll be up and down and up and down. And so we begin, and it begins. The beginning of the Amidah is as traditionally known, and of course it does not include the imahot, or the mothers. You can insert them as you like, and you'll notice some of the language is a little bit different than Reform liturgy has changed. Our first blessing, of course, is our avot. You'll notice that this particular translation uses the word cause for Adonai. If indeed the Yud He Vav He is the causative to be, or to cause to be, or to cause to breathe, that is the English reference for each of these. And so it begins, as all Shmona Esrei prayers do, with first our avot, which together we know this one. But I forgot how to do it, just sitting, it just got me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu ve'Imotenu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzhak ve'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel ve'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibur v'Hanora El Elyon Gomer Chasadim Tovim V'Konei Hakol V'Zocher Chastei Avot V'Imahot Umevi Gula Livnei V'neihem Laman Shemo Ba'ahava Melech Ozer Umoshia Umagen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham V'Ezrat Sarah. But folded in here is the poem of the Alephs, Adir Mizle Yesha Tazil Lahamoni. Let the maple, which indeed is this Edar, let the maple sap of salvation drip upon my crowd. Let the one who treats us make the walnut flower, the egg goes. And then each prayer in its third line says, Barosh Shana La'ilon, on the trees, new year, let Ametz Emunai. Yes, let my faith be strong. And this is taken from Psalms 84 and then continues with Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham. Then we continue the second section. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע. מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים. סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומדומלה, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי הכל. But again, before the Chatima, or that Baruch Atah Adonai, we get a new prayer here. And this one is taken from Proverbs 8:35. Bahilu Neru Yair Lenuchuyim. May God's lamp shine and let it illumine with the guided ones. This is with a bet. Barosh Bahik Yazhik Leaf Duyim. Let the bright cypress, in this case it's a cypress tree, brighten the saved ones on the new year, on the tree's new year. Bless the world, Beirech the world with living and reviving rains. For who finds me has found life, says Proverbs. And then Baruch Atah Adonai, who lifts up the dead or all things. And then our Kiddusha, which of course this one is a weekday Kiddusha, but we will see if we can remember the Shabbat one, even though our text is different. Nikadesh et shimcha ba'olam, kashem shemakdishim oto b'shmei marom, kakatuv ayad niviecha, v'kara zel zeh v'hamar, Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzivahot, Milo kol haaretz kivodo. Adir, Adirenu, Adonai, Adonenu ma'adir shimcha b'chol haaretz. Baruch atah Adonai Mimkomo, Echad hu Eloheinu, hu Avinu hu Malkeinu, hu Moshienu v'hu Yashmienu, barachamav lehenei kol chai. Ani Adonai Elohechem, Yimloch Adonai le'olam, Elohai Yitzion, L'dor v'dor, Hallelujah. And we are seated. The L'dor v'dor is followed by Gadol u'michulal v'ram al la'el. This is our Gimel, great and praiseworthy, high over all other gods. Geffen, Gimel is Geffen, for to the vine we are likened in the vineyard of God on the tree's new year. And the phrase that is taken is from Isaiah, Gaber sason ba'omrei ein ka'el. Strength and joy for those who say, there is none like God, for great in your midst is the Holy One of Israel. So we've had our Aleph, Bet, and Gimel. Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. Now we go to the sections that would not be in a Shabbat Amidah. One of the things that we ask for is Vina and Haskel. We bless God to be blessed with knowledge and intelligence, and not just knowledge, but common sense, which is considered and then added with Devir Tivneh Lamisu Yameh. May you build a devir, which is the center part of the sanctuary for the specific people. May the plane tree, a particular kind of tree, I don't know, a delev, which begins with dalid, lengthen in its heights. Barosh Hashanah la'ilon, on the New Year's of trees, seek out wisdom and cause it for us. And indeed, Proverbs says, Ki Adonai yitain chokhmah, because God gives us wisdom. And this is ended with the Hatimah, Baruch Atah Adonai, Chonein Hada'at, who grants wisdom and understanding. Yes?
Well, for plane trees, the sycamore, but it refers to the cypress and the plane trees that don't fruit.
Okay.
And that has no applicability to the New Year trees, because it has nothing to do with bringing the fruit to the temple. So why are those things included in it?
Because we have Aleph to Tav. You need every kind of tree you can get. And this poet is using every reference he can to every different kind of tree to sort of talk about, if Eitz Chaim, it is a tree of life, then every kind of tree would have some gift to give to the world. We'll see in our little wise friend story that of references to trees and what they give. Sometimes it's simply shade rather than fruit, or other kinds of attributes to which we aspire. So, it holds the soil together. There's so many gifts of the trees, right? So, yeah, so plane tree, I don't know, but if it talks about length and height, then we can add the breadth of wisdom, the length of wisdom to which we would hope we get.
I have a question, was this found when they found those things in the attic or something? Is that part of that?
Yes, the Cairo Geniza, yes, was found, and a Geniza is castaway books and poetry that might include the holy name in it, therefore can't be thrown away or disposed of, and so a Geniza is a storage place for old texts or things that are just being discarded. And in that Geniza, they found many pieces of liturgy and art and poetry that had never been discovered before, including this.
Oh, okay, that's what I want.
Yeah, which is quite amazing. So the next phrase that we ask, Hashivenu Adonai Avinu LaToratecha, return us to Torah, bring us closer to your commandments so that we can repent. And in this one, we are say to Hader, Shara, may Rosh, Amanah, may praise, O Voyager, this is our Hey, O Voyager, from the peak of faith, and in this case it's the Hadass tree, the myrtle tree, will Yifracha, will flourish for someone who believes. Barosh Hashanah la'ilon, will you bring back the uncountable ones? And Jeremiah says, yes, for I will return the exile of the land as in the beginning. So here is a hope for those who might have left the faith to return, and the Hatimah blessing, Baruch Atah Adonai harotzeh b'tshuvah, blessed is this eternal God who desires repentance. And it is the myrtle that is the tree of note for the hay. Another blessing asks to forgive us. Salach lanu avinu ki chatanu, machal lanu malkenu ki pashanu. Sounds very much like our Yom Kippur liturgy. And this has the vav with it, va'amcha latova tatir, and give your people abounding good. In this case, it's the vered or vered, which is the word for a special kind of rose. Let the rose illuminate and not deform, but Rosh Hashanah la'ilon, on the new year of the trees, and the phrase comes from Jeremiah, designate forgiveness for the people to clarify, for I will forgive those that I remain. And look at the cleverness of this poet, because he ties the first letter with the prayer. The second vav is an acrostic of a kind of tree or plant. The third line is always the new year of the tree. And then he finds a scriptural phrase that relates to it and starts with the right letter. So this is Poetry in Hebrew is not rhyming, but it is quite brilliant. So the vered is not the roses that we grow here in America, but the wild roses that grow. It's kind of a smaller, less petal, less soft flower, but it's like a wild hedgerows. We might have those here. But that's the vered, and what we know of as the shoshana is more like the beautiful rose that we find so fragrant and romantic. The Hatima, Baruch Atah Adonai, Chanun HaMarbeh Lisloach. Blessed are you, Adonai, who's merciful and gives us forgiveness. Also, notice our suffering God. You can see some of these things we don't mention on Shabbat, but our daily supplications and are quite beautiful, I think. Look at our suffering and plead our case and redeem us quickly for your name, for you are a redeemer. Here we get the Zayin. Let illumination, Zahor Yazhir Makom Yaakov. Let Zohar, let shining light come out from Jacob's place. And it's the Zayit, it's the olive tree. That becomes our Zayin, likened to an olive tree, Jacob. But Rosh Hashanah la'ilon, Zot ye'amer la'Yaakov, Jeremiah, it says, let this be said of Jacob, for Adonai liberates Jacob. Baruch atah Adonai go'el Yisrael, please God, redeem Israel. We have a prayer for healing. In this Amidah, which we have moved to our Mishaberach on Shabbat, and it is Rafenu Adonai v'nei rapeh hoshienu. Heal us, cause that we may be healed, save that when we be saved, for our praises are you, and bring up complete healing to all of the sick. For a sovereign God, healer and faithful and merciful are you. This we get with the letter Chet. Seek liberation for your congregation. It is the Charuv, which is the carob that is referenced in this. Let the carob sweeten and let its blessings praise you, Barosh Hashanah Le'ilon, on the new year, on the tree's new year. And we are told, Chai Tirape Goy Mehalach. Taken from Jeremiah again, may Chai, may life, or the living one, heal the nation that trusts in God. For I will lift healing or a treatment for you, according to Jeremiah. And then Baruch Atah Adonai Rofei Cholei Amo Yisrael. We pray for healing for all of our congregation and individuals in our midst who are suffering and in pain. Bless this year for produce and goodness. Of course, not this year because it's the Shemitah year, but we do ask during the Amidah that we berech Alecha Adonai Eloheinu et Hashana Hazot ve'et kol minei tevu ata l'tova. Bless all of our produce that it will grow well. And the letter Tet is our next. Taher misos haaretz. Purify the joy of the earth. Drip blessings. Tif. Taf is a drop. So tif bracha, drip blessings on those who call the desired land on Rosh Hashanah of the trees. Arrange a rain blessing on the land. For those who are blessed by God will inherit the land. Psalm 37:22. This is, I guess, the biblical phrase that goes with drip irrigation into the desert. This is
question.
Yes.
You said the top that apply because it's Shemitah year, but the trees bear every year, and can we not make use of the trees bearing during the Shemitah? No.
No, you may not. Well, you may not economically benefit from them. You can eat aftergrowth, but you cannot. Only the poor can eat from the produce of the land in that Shemitah year, which generally what ends up happening in Israel, from my understanding, is that the Arab farmers come and farm those trees, and they kind of do this trade very similar to at Pesach when you take your bread goods and the neighbor redeems it for a year, so rents it out, so to speak. So there, depending on the religiosity of the farmers, you don't eat new growth during a Shemitah year.
Well, I thought you could eat what spontaneously comes.
I think there's mixed. It's difficult for me to completely say this, because from the text itself, you are not to benefit in any way from the spontaneous growth, but leave it for the poor, at least according to the biblical understanding. The rabbis might have tempered that, but the biblical understanding is it's left there for the poor for any aftergrowth or stuff that comes out, but you are personally to plan ahead and to use. But of all things, you can buy imports. So that is why the Shemitah year, the markets are filled with crummy cucumbers that they imported from another place, rather than the beautiful cucumbers that are growing on the vines in their own situation. If one follows the biblical law strictly, I have not followed the life of the verse and where and how the rabbis move that. But the idea of Shemitah is that you are not benefiting from the growth during that 7th year. Which, what a waste, as grandma would say. So you find other things for it. I mean, again, I think that they are very good at doing that kind of thing.
You eat a lot of beef.
Yeah, it's your keto food. We ask that dew and rain will come in its appropriate time, is one of the blessings, as well as sound the great shofar of our freedom for all the people. We get then the Yud section of the bracha, Yah, of course, being God's personal name. God, Adonai, hurry salvation to your hopeful people. Yivulin, which is the income of your crops, is the Yud. The income should be pleasant in their fruitfulness. Barosh Hashanah le'ilon. Yomar le'asof, say to the ingathering of the exiles that you have collected from Zechariah, for I will liberate them and they will increase as they have increased. And so we have our famous Yud, our 10th letter. And then we say, Baruch atah Adonai mikabetz nidchei amo Yisrael, blessed are you, Adonai, who returns the exiles to people. We certainly want to go back to the judges of old. We don't know how our judges are doing in this world, so we need a new that says, pack a Supreme Court, return our judges and our scholars as they were in their greatest of days, and have them rule in kindness, compassion, and do righteousness and in judgment. Before that bracha, we have the letter Kaf. Kaf, as you have let our words be heard, let the karam, the vineyard, give its fruit to us. Barosh Hashanah le'ilon, on the new year of the trees. Oh, look what he did. Yakriya tzedek mosnenu. Let our scales be even, let them be tilted towards righteousness, because Adonai shifotenu, because God is our judge. Did you say, do we tilt them to righteousness? I don't know. I know, I don't know. I don't think you're supposed to do this, but I guess Isaiah thought it was okay. I guess. Baruch atah Adonai melech ohev tzedakah umishpat. Blessed is God who loves righteousness and judgment. I almost wish we did all these blessings on Shabbat. They're so good. To the bad guys, the guys who speak evil May there be no hope. May all their evil be wiped out in a moment, and may your enemies and all the enemies quickly be cut off, the arrogant ones speedily in our days. Of course, there were enemies during the course of the times that the rabbis collected these prayers, and those, it could be this could be the anti-Semites prayer. Wipe out those guys and don't let their lies carry forth. We are now to the letter of the Lamed. Lahashmiya Yesha La'avdo. Let salvation be heard for your servant. The 21-day ripening almond releases its scent on the New Year's of the trees. So lose La'esrim Ve'echad Yigmor Nirdo. I don't know about 21 days to ripen an almond, but I assume that's correct, that it takes 3 weeks. Well, it might be for the flowers to come out, and maybe it is something. Again, we know nothing about Middle East agriculture. I know in Washington, D.C., the cherry blossom time, it might be there was an almond blossom season that would set forth. And this, of course, is quite, I'm not sure I would go with this translation. Let heretics be betrayed, for the wicked will be lost. Literally, yes, that what is written there is la'abed notzrim, uminim asher bo bagdu. This indeed must have been a time of great persecution for the Jews by their neighbors. And so we have this word taken from the liturgy, but then from Psalms, it says, for the wicked will be lost. Ki rash'im yovedu. Baruch atah Adonai, shover oivim umachnia zedim. May you, God, shatter the enemies and subjugate the arrogant. Righteous, meanwhile, we want to be blessed. So al hatzadikim and all hachasidim va'al zignei amacha beit Yisrael va'al pleitat, for all of the refugees and all of the Garei Tzedek, all of the righteous Jews by choice, and on all of us, may you have compassion, for it is you in which we trust. We get to our mem, from the time of destruction of the desired house, meaning God's Torah, more me'aretz, the mirror, how do you say that? Myrrh was removed from the land and its settlements on the New Year's of trees. Let there be a fortress for the close people, for in me we take from Isaiah our islands of hope. And so the destruction of the temple, we hope that there will be a return of all of the myrrh, which again, I don't know if it was all carried off, but perhaps it was worth a great deal. And may its production come again. Baruch atah Adonai, Mish'an u'miftach l'tzadikim. May you be the support and the trust of the righteousness. And of course, to Jerusalem, the holy city, we pray for the return of Zion. Noam sason b'higayon. May pleasant joy and meditation. And here we go again. Nerd the charcom, spikenard and saffron. I'm not sure if I do the Hebrew or the English worse. Spikenard and saffron. We will envision on the New Year of the tree, and let the city be built on its mound, and hear what we desire. This is the Nun, Ki vana Adonai Tzion, because we've said God built or continued to build or has built Zion. Baruch atah Adonai, Bonei Yerushalayim, blessed is God who builds Jerusalem. We then have two blessings that are at Semach David. May the sprout of David, may the Davidic Messiah come and sprout the horn of salvation, and hear our voices, God, to have mercy and compassion upon all of us. We move to our Samech, roll out the highway of our children, and let samarad yarbeh. May grape buds, new words I don't know. May all of these come on the Rosh Hashanah of the trees and listen to my siach, my conversation and my entreaties, for God listens to the needy. This is for Samech, Baruch Atah Adonai, Shomea Tefillah. And then here we go to the sections that we know. We have Ritzei Adonai, Eloheinu ba'amacha Yisrael. May the words of my mouth be listened to. We move to the Ayin.
Question.
Yes.
It mentions grapes up there. Of course, that's not a tree. Are grapes allowed on our Seder plates?
Well, they're not on our Seder plates, but they are in our cups.
Okay, so you don't put grapes on the plate itself. Okay.
I don't think, I mean, they're not called for. I'm sure that the people who create all kinds of extra symbols have reasons to use grapes. Certainly when we did the things about unethical treatment of foreign employees in California, if you remember, people would put grapes to talk about, you know, how we treat the people who work for us. But no, the grapes are in our cups, the fruit of the vine. That's a word I'm not familiar with, the grape bud, samarad. But again, I think he's gone far and wide to find names of agriculture that we don't know.
We know that grapes are tree.
Many of these are just vine produce as well. I mean, just anything that comes agriculturally. We move to the ayin. The value of a sacrifice in its hall. That may the offerings please to lift up the people in its exaltation. Arva mincha laseit am. On the New Year of the trees. Olot, it's funny that olot, I mean, this idea that this fits in here, but the offerings in general, let them be received by God's people. Ki rotze Adonai ba'amo, ki from Psalms, God desires God's people. This is the ayin. Baruch atah Adonai hamachazir shechinato l'tzion. This is one of the blessings that we have in our blessings. So we know we're down to the last three. Modim anachnu lach. Thank you, God. We are thankful for that all you do. Baruch el hahodaot. Blessed is the God of thanksgiving. And we have our hoda'ah prayer. And he adds the letter P with Piro yitain. May the orchard. So orchard. Renee, have you ever heard your last name is Orchard? So I would say his fruit, his fruitfulness will give happiness, l'samchenu, and will give joy. And pardes is the word that we know of as an orchard of joy, along with the tzimchei eretz, the yivula, along with the sprouts of the land and its crop on the new year of the trees. Piduyecha, may your liberated ones praise you day and night. Ki na'im nava tehillah, for in Psalms we say that it is pleasant and beautiful, and so it is fitting. Baruch atah Adonai hatov shimcha u'lecha na'el lehodot. It is fitting and great that we give thanks. The priestly benediction is added in a weekday service at this point, which is the next blessing. And then we turn to asking for peace. Grant peace and goodness and grace and kindness. Sim shalom tova uvracha chen v'chesed v'rachamim. We ask for all of peace and good and blessing. And our final section of the prayer, you'll all be happy to know out there, is indeed one acrostic for all the following letters of the alphabet. Simchei ilanot. We envision the sprouting of the trees, bibracha, in blessing, kikayon, rosh yom, a gourd grown on a day, tzadik, kuf, resh, rimon, seeds, la'am zeh, a pomegranate will flower for this people, Barosh Hashanah la'ilon, on the new year of the trees, shikmim, sycamores, Visheruk, and grapevines high up like that, Tashmi Enu, we will let be heard. And our final idea from Jeremiah, for true peace I give you in this place, Ki shalom emet etein lachem b'makom hazeh. Baruch atah Adonai hamivarech et amo Yisrael b'shalom. Blessed are you, God, who causes peace for the people of Israel. And if you want to go look in the Bodleian Library, you will find a transcription for these prayers. This is actually on Sepharia, for those of you who are interested to look at it more thoroughly. It is a beautiful, beautiful prayer. And
so there won't be any Israeli food for our singers this year, correct?
It's probably pre-packaged, pre-sold, or double sold last. Some of it, of course, you can't because it's got to be fresh every year. Some of it can certainly go from year to year. So it's not fresh. I mean, you won't get fresh fruit, but I don't know if you did anyways.
Not so good.
Yeah. So we have our entire Amidah with the different trees, which I thought was quite lovely. And the tree story. So the Tu B'Shvat adventure that I had run across is a beautiful, beautiful walk where we walk through the trees, and each tree has its story from wise friends. And I might have to change this. We would walk from tree to tree, which I will not make you do. For it is 20 degrees outside, again, by now in the 30s. And so I thought, and not only that, but those, because of the cold weather, you received your own copy of the book, so you can follow along with us. I hope our authors would be happy, but this way you can read and see what we have. The Story of Wise Friends, which is a book that is written, I can tell you actually right now, for a tree adventure to go from tree to tree by Jackson. No, they don't give me their last names. Jackson and Rachel. Want to get it correct? Jackson Mercer and Rachel Jackson, who have put together this beautiful art to tell the story. As we walk through the forest, we find when I was just 8 days old, my parents named me Raviv. The word Raviv means a little droplet of water, a perfect and round gift. And this, of course, is beautiful artwork. I am older now, and I have learned many things. I learned to take care of my friends, the trees, and to nourish them just as a drop of fresh rain does. Now listen closely, don't even blink, and I will introduce you to some of my friends. And I'd like to imagine you outside walking from tree to tree, and each one of these pages tied to the trees. And at each tree, we would stop and read the text that is there. And perhaps, again, I hope that those of you who know about some of the wisdom of these trees will let me know some of the ideas that we know. First, we would go to our date palm standing tall. It peers down on me and it announces, and we know perhaps this phrase, Sadiq Katamar Yifrach. Stand up, straight as can be, always do the right thing, and you will reach high as the top of my fronds. Now, the date palms, this I do know. The date palms in Israel, of course, are the honey that is meant when we talk about a land of milk and honey. The honey was not honeybees the way we think of them, but rather it was the paste of the date palms that was so sweet that it indeed tasted as honey. And so the fruit, the sweetness of the dates is not the lesson that is drawn here, because we are told that these are very tall trees. And of course, we know they are. Yes, the story of ancient dates were found, one set at Masada that was taken and actually germinated very recently. And it was a date palm that is grown named Methuselah, and it was male and therefore could give no fruit. And so outside of Qumran, another set of dates were found and germinated and got a female flowering tree who they named Khana. And they took some of the, they cross-pollinated Methuselah and Khana, and they were able to get dates that very much had the taste of the honeybee honey, apparently. And those are producing those trees from these ancient days brought to life, which is a very, I think, exciting story. And we are told, oh, you want to get those dates? Uh-huh.
And they were doing an auction of some number of them. And they went for vast sums. I don't know what I didn't put results on it, but they're going to do that as a fundraiser to continue their stuff.
That's exciting.
I have another question.
Yes.
For the purpose of Kaddish, I mean, New Year trees, are shrubs considered trees?
It is a shrub of life.
Well, I mean, like a shrub, like currants would grow on a shrub.
So I would think any fruiting plant would be counted on New Year of the trees, I would think, because it's income tax, basically. When do I count the produce of this tree? Although they use the word eighths, they don't use the word shrub or vine or anything like that. So I'm not positive.
Yeah, I don't know if the shrub is Amidah or eighths.
Yeah, so I would not know. I would not.
Is it part of the reason for the selecting the day for the New Year for the trees is the first year after the tree is planted, you're not supposed to harvest it, or the first year where you do nothing, the second year is you can give the fruit to the poor, and the third year is when you start harvesting it for
yourself.
Not exactly. The first 3 years, you can't use it at all. The fourth year, it goes to the temple, the temple.
You pay taxes on it. But I do believe that the poor can come and enjoy the fruits I don't remember what year exactly. One of those years, not the first.
But it's not the anniversary when it's planted, it's, they just choose the.
This starts the produce of this year because allegedly it's spring. It's the sap rising is what they say. So any growth prior to that is year 2, but anything after today is 3. And again, I guess, I don't know if they're nearing the end of their reigns. I don't know if they are, I don't know exactly what it is that makes the sap rise. Allegedly, it would be getting warmer. I can't believe it, but I guess it is.
If the tree was planted last week, it would still be considered 1 year old on Monday.
Oh, I don't know about that.
I think that's why they pick a single day. It's for the.
Oh my gosh. I'm glad I'm not a tree.
Yeah.
Is that like it's like the income tax thing? You get a whole deduction even if you're born on December 31st?
Exactly the same thing.
Jewish accountants.
So why do we have the biblical proscription against Orloff?
it's better for growth. Isn't it an agricultural wisdom?
I don't know, I mean, if it fruits, it fruits, if it doesn't, it doesn't, what difference does it make?
But I think, you know, the trimming of a tree and not taking its produce immediately, but the trimming it back and letting it grow, I thought that actually is an enhancement of fruitful growth. That's what I've
That's why I
read.
asked them, you know.
Yeah, I don't. I have silk trees outside too.
Or it doesn't give us a reason for.
No, it is one of those many prohibitions that are those that don't give you reason. You just do it because God said so. Even though we can come up with ethical or scientific reasons why it may be a good thing, whatever it is, we never know. And the rabbis say, don't even ask. It's not about your growth or your ethics or your integrity. It's about do what you're told.
Yeah, I always like to think it's sort of like the laws of kosher, which says you just can't eat everything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's certain things you just don't eat.
That's right. Do as I told you. Don't ask.
And even 2 years for that tree, hopefully makes it sweeter when it comes.
That's what they say happens. But again, you are so right about that much of Judaism is about self-control. And if you have to wait, you wait. Next, we move to the larger trees of the forest. So imagine we walked around to Marshall or Ron or wherever. And here we say, celebrate with us and shout with joy. Yarinu kol atse yair, may the fruits of the forest, may the trees of the forest dance in joy. From deep within its dark leaves, the dense branches of the cedar tree boldly demands, and we get a phrase here from the cedar tree. And again, where these all come from are at the end of the book. So the Cedar of Lebanon, this is taken from Psalms 92:13. The last one was from Psalms 96:12. So that was about the trees of the forest will shout with joy. This is like a cedar in Lebanon, they will thrive. Eretz Lebanon, Yizkeh. The cedars of Lebanon, we know, were tremendous import, and they would be run down the sea and brought in to build the temple in Jerusalem. So it's a building kind of wood, and the idea of wealth and strength. I don't know if it's a cedar tree like our cedar and cedar chests and those kinds of things. No bugs in the temple. The kikayon is the fast-growing vine that Jonah finds refuge under. And so the kikayon is, of course, in the book of Jonah. And this thing grew to be shade and therefore to save him from heat and distress and unhappiness. So the kikayon would be the shade tree that we are giving thanks for. And so I'm sure we could find a weed out there that I would have tied the kikayon to. I grew over Jonah and gave him shade from the hot sun and helped him when his sadness overwhelmed him. Follow my lead and help the people around you and be a comfort to them. We move then, the next tree is the tree at the farthest corner of the field, which whistles for me to come over and tells me, and I bet you know what this is. If you remember that we do not glean to the corners of our fields, but instead we are told in the holiness code in Leviticus, leave the corners free. La'oni v'lager ta'azov otam, leave them for the poor and the stranger. And so the trees at the corner are telling him, be generous to your neighbor, leave my fruits for anyone who doesn't have enough to eat. We move now to the ta'ena, or the fig tree, the shoresh ta'ene, The roots of the fig tree are soft, but break through the hard stone. I don't know that. Fig roots, anybody know about fig roots? The fig tree looks at me lovingly and says, be kind, even to people who are not, because kindness is more powerful than harshness. Like my roots, softness can break through the harshest of stone. So that might be like the willow. I don't know if figs are related, but I know that willow branches just cut through concrete. So you can't have a willow by your patio or any concrete structure. So that's interesting. As I sat down, the shrubs slowly sigh in celebration of Shemitah, the year of silence, and they whisper quietly, remember to rest and relax. The phrase here comes from Exodus, and the 7th year of the land, relax it and let it rest. And that indeed is the Shemitah year in which we find ourselves. The Bi'at Hashmitah. Hashmitena.
Specifically says that the shrubs rest for the year too.
Well, according to this rabbi, yes, exactly. I don't know agriculturally what shrubs, and I don't know what shrubs there were. Exactly. Finally, little Raviv goes and finds out Eitz Chaim Hi. There is so much to learn from the tree of life. And you will know the phrase. Each and every tree has something important to say because Eitz Chaim Hi Lamacha Zikim Ba. We know that those who grasp it find life. If you listen closely, you too might hear the wise whispers. And so we are told to listen to the truth of the trees, all of which are used to teach us about life and about our faith. That indeed is our adventure. We are not outside and trying all the fruits that we would love to be, but we hope that next year at this time, it'll be 60 degrees in the middle of January, because it is sometimes. We will have these tied to trees and tastings of each of the fruits as we go through. And so our adventures with the trees, the silk trees, which are my best growing cycle. The fruit is dust. Right. And so, I don't know, anybody have any more wisdom of trees to share? So we turn to, after Eitz Chaim and after study, we turn to our Alenu and Kaddish prayer at the back of our booklet. And you, of course, got the book. You have pieces of the book, so you can look up the phrases, as well as, I hope I got you the page. I gave you the page with all of the quotes, so you can, yes, good, okay. So we turn to what says it's page 29 in our booklet, and we rise for the Alenu. Alenu l'shabeach ladon hakol, latet gedula liyotzeh breshit, shelo asanu kagoye haratzot, velo samanu kamishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, v'goralenu kechol hamonam. V'anachnu korim umishtachavim umodim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu. Let us now praise the sovereign of the universe and proclaim the greatness of the Creator who has set us apart from other families of the earth, giving us a destiny unique among the nations. We bend the knee and bow, acknowledging the supreme sovereign, the Holy One of blessing. The Nemar V'haya Adonai L'melech HaKol Haaretz Bayom Hahu Yeh Adonai Echad U'Shemo Echad. And as we are standing, we also take this moment to recall all of those who came before us, who were our trees of life and the strength of our days. We mark the yahrzeit or the anniversary of the passing of Toby Besser, Charles Grant, Eleanor LeClaire, Janice Lowen, Mamie Lowe, Francis Rosenberg, Jewel Safferman, Isabel B. Bernstein, Harley Ellman, Alma Hockman, John G. Moody, Robert Rosengarten, Helen Burney, Edward LeClaire, Melvin Schenker, Rose Bergstein, Loretta Cox, Carl Alling Lindquist Jr., and Florence Yates. And we mark with sadness our recent loss of two beloved members of our congregation, Joseph Bettman and Bruce Holroyd. We gather them into our hearts and our prayers because they were our family. And we also think of all of our own who we have loved and lost, and we remember them with our Kaddish prayer. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shamei rabbah, v'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'hayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, v'agala uv'izman kariv imru amen. Yehei shamei rabbo mivarach le'olam ul'olmei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpoar v'yitroman v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemed kudesha b'richu la'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechemata da'amiran bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shalom rabba min shamaya v'chayim alenu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'mramav hu ya'aseh shalom alenu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the one who causes peace on high bring peace to us, to all Israel, and to all of the world. And we say amen, and we are seated. Osei shalom b'mramav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. And we wish each other happy Tu B'Shvat, Shabbat Shalom, Chag Sameach for the trees. May your sap grow. May all of our sap rise and warmth and flowering come soon. And may you have meaningful Martin Luther King Day observances and programs, whether they be in person in the cold or on Zoom. So Shana Tova for any of you who is a tree out there.
Thank you very much. It was wonderful.